I let my daughter-in-law finish telling me how my own house should be run. I didn't argue, and I didn't raise my voice. I smiled, opened my black household binder, and changed the rules that had been keeping her comfortable for the last 6 months. Nobody cares about your opinion. Stop being delusional. My daughter-in-law Vanessa screamed right in my face. The dull thud of her flat palm slamming onto the wooden tabletop echoed through the room. Instantly, the warmth drained from the kitchen. The comfortable clinking of silver spoons against fine china completely stopped, and my son Logan just stared down at his fingernails, utterly embarrassed. I sat perfectly still in my cushioned chair, feeling the cool, familiar edge of the old dining table under my fingers, and looked Vanessa right in her cold, gray-blue eyes. Right there at Sunday lunch, right over dessert, she had just decided that my beloved downstairs home office needed to be completely cleared out. It was going to make room for her expensive new home gym, a shiny steel monstrosity she'd ordered without even asking for my permission. This was my house, the home my late husband and I had built over 30 years ago in a quiet, tree-lined suburb of Columbus, Ohio, through decades of hard work and sacrifice. Logan and Vanessa had moved in about 6 months ago, ostensibly to save on rent and help me out around the house. But from day one, they had spread through the place like mold on a damp wall, step by step, room by room, without an ounce of hesitation. I smoothed out the white tablecloth with a slow, methodical stroke of my hand. I took a deep breath. I didn't feel tears or weakness. I felt a crystal-clear sense of resolve. Vanessa was breathing heavily, her arms crossed arrogantly over her chest, clearly proud of her ruthless, loud outburst right in front of the kids. Logan didn't say a single word to defend his own mother. He just sat there like an extra in the movie of his own life, avoiding eye contact at all costs. They honestly thought a 60-year-old widow would be easily intimidated that I'd just quietly retreat into the small dark guest room upstairs. I offered a faint smile, stood up very slowly, and locked eyes with both of them. My voice was steady. "I have an announcement." Vanessa scoffed, arching a cynical eyebrow, but for the first time, a tiny flicker of genuine uncertainty flashed in her eyes. I walked calmly into the hallway, grabbed my purse, and retrieved my thick black household binder. I walked back and set it on the table right next to the hot coffee pot. As I flipped open the first page, the atmosphere in the room shifted tangibly. No one at that table would ever look at me the same way again. "Starting tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock, the rules in this house are changing fundamentally." I said, my voice calm and conversational. "The free ride is officially over." Vanessa let out a sharp, mocking laugh, but the sound fell completely flat. There was no echo of support for her this time. I pointed my index finger at the printed spreadsheets detailing the exact costs for electricity, gas, water, and the weekly groceries expenses that, until now, had been automatically deducted from my personal bank account. Out of pure maternal goodwill, I had been quietly footing the bill for everything, while the two of them pocketed their paychecks for luxury vacations and designer shopping. "Here is the routing number for the new joint household account," I explained matter-of-factly. "You will transfer exactly half of all household expenses into it by the 5th of every month." Logan swallowed hard and glanced at his wife. Vanessa's expression of arrogant dominance disintegrated into pure shock in a fraction of a second. They wanted to rule my property, but they had completely forgotten who controlled the financial lifeblood of the household. I turned the page slowly, savoring the moment, while Vanessa desperately tried to regain her footing and inhale enough air for a verbal counterattack. "This is absolutely ridiculous, Joan. We had a firm agreement about sharing this house," she cried out, her voice trembling slightly. "Our agreement was built on mutual respect, and you just permanently shattered that respect. I replied, without an ounce of anger in my voice. I closed the heavy binder with a soft but definitive thud that signaled the absolute finality of my decision. Logan cleared his throat uncomfortably, trying to laugh it off as a misunderstanding, and begged me to drop the subject so we could talk about it later, when things calmed down. I looked at him, my own son, and realized that words were completely useless at this point. I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door and went out for a long walk, leaving the two of them entirely alone with their new reality. When I returned from my walk in the early evening, the house was unusually quiet. The TV wasn't blaring, and the kitchen lights were off. I went straight to my downstairs office, closed the door behind me, and looked at the moving boxes Vanessa had already piled inside. Without a moment's hesitation, I carried every single box back out, hauled them upstairs, and stacked them neatly right outside their bedroom door. The next morning, I waited patiently until Logan and Vanessa had left for work before taking my next practical step. I called a local locksmith I'd known for years and had a heavy-duty secure lock installed on my office door. When Vanessa walked through the front door that afternoon and saw the stacked boxes coupled with the gleaming new deadbolt, her face turned bright red with rage. She stormed into the kitchen where I was calmly brewing my afternoon tea and reading the local paper. "What is this childish nonsense with the lock, Joan? We're supposed to be a family sharing a home," she hissed. I took a slow sip from my mug, looked her dead in the eye, and replied, "Privacy isn't childish. It's a basic requirement for us to live under the same roof." She realized instantly that her loud tantrums were bouncing off my emotional detachment, like waves crashing against a brick wall. Logan came home shortly after, saw the lock, and just shook his head in weary resignation, utterly incapable of taking his wife's side. Vanessa loudly demanded he do something about it, but Logan just stood helplessly in the hallway, looking miserable and remaining silent. That evening, I sat in my securely locked room, soaking in the newfound peace and quiet, already planning my next logical move for the coming week to fully secure my independence. Up until that point, I had been cooking dinner for everyone, almost every single night, doing their laundry, and maintaining the large backyard entirely on my own. Starting that Tuesday, I completely shut down the unpaid concierge service for the two adults in the house. I bought groceries only for myself, cooked a single portion, and washed strictly my own clothes. When Vanessa came home hungry that evening and found a cold, dark stove, she peered into the empty pots in disbelief. I thought we were all eating together. "I had an incredibly stressful day at the office," she complained loudly to the room. "You are two healthy grown adults. You're more than capable of taking care of yourselves." I replied friendly but entirely distant. Logan slinked into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and realized his usual snacks weren't there. I had organized my food into a separate, clearly labeled bin and made it explicitly clear that my provisions were now strictly off limits. Vanessa was seething. Her cozy, all-inclusive lifestyle in my home had completely collapsed in a matter of days. She tried to emotionally manipulate Logan right in front of me, loudly lamenting my total lack of motherly support. Logan looked at me with pleading eyes, but I met his gaze with a cool, professional detachment. They had the right to live in my house for now, but my personal time and energy were no longer up for grabs. As I left the kitchen, I noticed Vanessa secretly taking a picture of my fridge shelf on her phone, presumably to complain about it to Logan later. I couldn't have cared less. Thank you for watching Quiet Revenge. Some AI tools may assist parts of our process, but every story is personally selected, reviewed, edited, and carefully produced by our team. If you'd like to help us continue creating meaningful stories, you can support us with the cost of a small cup of coffee. Patreon, HT https://www.patreon.com/quietrevengeFamily.co.fi/https/co-fi.com/the story family PayPal https://www.paypal.com/PayPalMe/Kanhuangmin. We truly appreciate your kindness and support. The 5th of the month arrived. A quick glance at my banking app confirmed what I already suspected: no money had been deposited. They honestly thought I wouldn't follow through, that I'd just let it slide for the sake of keeping the peace. I didn't bother waiting around for excuses. That evening, I walked straight into the living room where they were lounging on the couch. I wordlessly dropped the printed notice from the utility company regarding the rate hikes for gas and electric right onto the coffee table in front of them. Since your share of the expenses wasn't transferred today, the shared streaming subscriptions under my name will be canceled tonight, I said. Vanessa bolted upright, launching into a lecture about family solidarity and claiming the money hadn't arrived due to a banking error. A banking error is your problem, not mine. Starting tomorrow, we operate strictly on a pay-to-play basis here, I replied calmly. I sat down at the computer desk in the hallway, deleted their user profiles, and changed the passwords to every single account I paid for. Logan came tracking after me, shuffling his feet and whispering that Vanessa had withheld the money on purpose just to test me. She wanted to see if you were actually bluffing, Mom. Please just try to understand her side of it, he pleaded quietly. I looked at my son, feeling a deep wave of pity for his weakness, but I stood my ground. She tested me and she got her answer, I said, shutting my laptop. The next morning, the high-end espresso machine in the kitchen was locked away in my pantry. They had to figure out their own coffee. The house belonged to me, and I wanted that reality to be visually and unmistakably clear in our day-to-day living. Over the months, the large, sunlit living room had been slowly overtaken by Vanessa's modern knickknacks and yoga mats. On Thursday, I used the window of time while they were at work to restore the room entirely to its original state. I carefully packed all of their personal belongings into 2 cardboard boxes and set them neatly in the hallway. I moved my beloved solid wood antique furniture right back to where it had proudly stood for decades. When Vanessa unlocked the front door after work and saw the boxes, she shrieked for Logan hysterically. This is a complete insult. You are systematically kicking us out of the common areas of this house, she screamed at me. I stood calmly in this newly rearranged living room, enjoying the restored harmony of the space, and looked at her serenely. These are my rooms, Vanessa. You are month-to-month tenants here, not owners with design rights, I clarified. Logan walked in visibly exhausted by the endless conflict and tried desperately to play peacemaker. He suggested they could set up their own little coffee station and lounge area upstairs to stay out of my way. Vanessa glared at him, furious that he wasn't backing her up unconditionally. The battle lines were permanently drawn, and any remaining comfort in their daily routine was officially gone. Vanessa shifted her strategy. She tried to wear me down psychologically, using the silent treatment and hostile avoidance. She stopped saying good morning, slammed doors loudly on purpose, and forbade Logan from speaking to me in the kitchen. But her childish tactics didn't faze me at all. In fact, I thoroughly enjoyed the newfound quiet and the extra time I had to myself. I started meeting up regularly with my old friends from my local book club, inviting them over for afternoon coffee and pastries. One Saturday afternoon, the 4 of us were sitting in the living room, laughing up a storm, when Vanessa burst in, completely caught off guard. She had apparently planned to use the large dining table to do her accounting paperwork, but the space was now firmly occupied by my guests. My friends felt the sudden thick tension in the room immediately, but they remained polite, greeting Vanessa with warm smiles. Vanessa just gave a tight, bitter nod, spun around on her heel, and disappeared back upstairs without a word. Late that evening, once Vanessa was asleep in bed, Logan called me into the kitchen. "Mom, this can't keep going on. Vanessa is miserable and she's already looking for our own apartment," he said sadly. I looked at him, feeling a profound sense of relief wash over me. "That is the best decision the two of you could possibly make," I replied. Logan was visibly shocked. He expected me to beg them to stay, but instead I had agreed without even blinking. 2 weeks went by. Instead of moving out, Vanessa resorted to passive-aggressive compliance, intentionally blocking the basement laundry room with mountains of her dirty clothes. On Saturday morning, I went down to wash my bed sheets, only to find the machine hijacked with her wet clothes which had been sitting there for days. I grabbed a clean laundry basket, transferred her damp things into it neatly, and placed the basket right outside their bedroom door upstairs. When Vanessa saw it, she completely lost her grip on her carefully maintained, arrogant composure. She came flying down the stairs, blocked my path, and shook from head to toe with pure, pent-up rage. "You are a bitter, lonely old woman who can't stand to see anyone else happy," she screamed, her voice echoing through the entire stairwell. I stood on the bottom step, looking up at her, feeling nothing but a deep sense of pity for her utter lack of control. "You're right about one thing, Vanessa. I do enjoy being alone in my own home. And that's exactly why the two of you are moving out by the end of the month," I said softly. My voice was so quiet and absolute that Vanessa felt instantly silent, finally registering the gravity of my words. Logan, who had overheard the entire exchange from the hall, stepped out of the kitchen, his face as white as a sheet. They thought I would endure their emotional abuse indefinitely, without ever pulling the trigger on the ultimate consequence. In that exact moment, it clicked for both of them. The game was officially over. No amount of arguing was going to change it. The eviction was final. Over the next few days, not a single loud word was spoken in the house. Stark reality had finally set in. Vanessa packed her belongings without any dramatic flair, quietly taping up a mountain of grocery store boxes she'd gathered. Logan worked silently alongside her, dutifully patching and painting the upstairs walls back to neutral white, avoiding any unnecessary eye contact with me. I monitored their progress daily. I didn't rush them, but I maintained a cool, unyielding presence in the house. They had found a small rental apartment on the other side of town, one that was significantly more expensive and much smaller than my home. On moving day, a large U-Haul truck backed into the driveway, and a few of their friends helped haul out the heavy furniture. I stood at the kitchen window, sipping my coffee, watching my house grow emptier, brighter, and more peaceful, piece by piece. Right before the final departure, Logan walked back into the kitchen alone to say goodbye. "I'm so sorry for how all of this handled, Mom. We completely misjudged your hospitality," he said quietly, his eyes fixed on the floor. I took his hand, gave it a gentle squeeze, and looked at him. "I love you, Logan, but my boundaries are non-negotiable." He nodded sadly, finally understanding my words for the first time in months, and walked slowly out to the waiting truck. As the U-Haul turned the corner and disappeared from view, I took a deep, clear breath. A wave of infinite relief flooded my chest. The house was mine again. I was alone in my house once more. The rooms felt expansive, clean, and filled with the familiar, peaceful stillness of the past. I cozied up my downstairs office, lining the shelves with my favorite books and placing fresh flowers on the kitchen table. 3 weeks later, Logan called me for the first time. His voice sounded noticeably lighter and more relaxed than it had in months. He told me about their new apartment, and I listened intently, choosing not to ask about Vanessa or reopen old wounds. Healing my relationship with my son would take time, but the foundation was finally built on clear, healthy respect. Vanessa would never cross my threshold again, and that boundary was entirely ironclad for everyone involved. This Sunday, I'm sitting in my backyard with a hot cup of tea, watching the birds and feeling the warm Ohio sun on my face. I defended my home and my dignity, not with explosive drama, but with quiet, consistent, everyday actions. You don't have to scream to be heard. You just have to keep a firm grip on the keys to your own life. Logan invited me to meet him for coffee at a little diner downtown next weekend. I told him I'd love to. The path to a fresh start is completely open as long as the boundaries remain intact. I smile, close my eyes, and savor the beautiful, independent peace of a life that belongs entirely to me again. Sitting here right now, I know deep down in my gut I did exactly the right thing. Thank you for watching Quiet Revenge. Some AI tools may assist parts of our process, but every story is personally selected, reviewed, edited, and carefully produced by our team. If you'd like to help us continue creating meaningful stories, you can support us with the cost of a small cup of coffee. Patreon https://www.patreon.com/Quiet Revenge Family Ko-fi https://ko-fi.com/The Story Family PayPal https://www.paypal.com/PayPal me/Kan Huang Min. We truly appreciate your kindness and support.